everybody. This is Alan Petersen with Meet the Thriller Author. And today on the podcast, I have USA Today bestselling author Ty Hutchinson, the creator of the long-running Abby Kane thriller series and other thrillers. Ty writes high-concept, fast-paced thrillers that keep readers up at night. And his latest, DarkBright, might be his creepiest yet, coming out on July 26th. Welcome to the podcast, Ty.
Hey, Alan. Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's so great. If people are watching this and see why I'm smiling, is Ty and I we're friends in the real world, so it's a different one.
We're not just virtual friends.
Yes, exactly. But so glad to finally have you on the podcast. So DarkBright, man, that's such a chilling and mysterious premise. What was the spark that led to that idea? You got to tell me about that one.
Well, it's like what you said. I would say most of my stories start off with me asking the what if question. And it's just, whatever pops into my head. Well, what if there was this girl in the middle of nowhere and all she could say was this one word that doesn't make any sense to anyone? Because when I thought up DarkBright, I just put two random words together and I went, okay, that sounds weird. Let's start there. Or what if you move to a new country and the friends you made, you find out that they had these really terrible rules, such as no unapproved pregnancies allowed, So everything starts off with me, what if, and I just kind of build around it. And I can't explain how the story vomits itself out, but it just does.
Yeah, and you've been writing the Abby Kane series for over a decade now. I can't believe how time flies.
A decade. And it's weird because it's not the first book I wrote. I wrote a couple of other books before that I didn't really feel like was capturing what I wanted. And so I killed the series and I sat down. I was like, well, you know what? I kind of like reading mysteries and thrillers and stuff like that. And my aunt, Abby Kane, is actually based off my aunt, who's a retired FBI agent. And she's short, 5 foot nothing, probably 100 pounds soaking wet. And she would tell me these stories about her life in DC and what she had to do. And I just found it so fascinating. So she sparked Abby Kane professionally. Mm-hmm. The personality of Abby Kane is really my mom. And I don't know if she ever figured it out or not. But I remember when my dad read my first Abby Kane book, I don't think he was maybe 2 chapters in, and he stopped and he looked up at me and said, does your mom know that Abby Kane is her? He picked up on it right away. And I said, I don't know. She's never said anything if she did.
Wow. Yeah. Well, that's great. Getting ideas from the real world for your books. Huh?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think a lot of it has to do with my background in advertising. In advertising, you're talking about inanimate objects most of the time, or services, and you're trying to make it relatable to people, why people should care about it. So if you're trying to sell like a watch, this is an inanimate object. What we would try to do was humanize everything we're doing, give it some kind of personality, some kind of trait that people can relate to, or at least see as something that, that's familiar, And so I think that, coupled with my curiosity in people in general, is what I think is where I pull a lot of my ideas from and into my stories, which is great if you travel like how I do, because the amount of experiences you get to pull from multiply.
Yeah, that's a big part of you, right? Because you've been writing full time since 2013, and you've been like a digital nomad, basically, right, for all that time.
Yeah, I've been homeless all that time. It's like I haven't had a permanent residence. I'm like a ghost. You can't find me. You don't know where I'm going to be. But it is, because I credit it to my wife, because at the time we were separating. It was on good terms. And she told me, she said, hey, you know what? You've always wanted to write and travel. Why don't you go and do that now? And as soon as she put that thought in my head, I started thinking about it. I took 2 days. I made up my mind. Yeah, I'm going to do this. And in 2 months, I had sold everything I had, packed everything I owned, what was left, into a small carry-on and a little backpack. And I took off on a one-way ticket.
Wow.
And my plan was to maybe stay 6 months in some major city around the world and try and write a book. And that's how it all started. I mean, there was no research, no planning, no hemming and hawing or anything like that. I just kind of did it and thought about all the great things that could come out of it, and really didn't think about all the negative things that could have gone wrong.
Yeah, because you went to play. I mean, you didn't know anybody. You went to Thailand at first, right?
I didn't know anybody. Yeah, Thailand was only supposed to be 6 months, but I was having so much fun here that I extended it for another 6 months, then another 6 months. And I finally, after a year and a half, I forced myself to move on. And I spent time in Indonesia, Vietnam, Malaysia, Taiwan, Korea, Cambodia, Laos, just kind of making my way around through the big cities and then even into the smaller towns. And I would just stay as long as it held my interest. And the minute it stopped holding my interest, I would look on Google Maps and go, where do I want to go next? And then I would just move around. And during that time, I was just living in hotels and Airbnbs and some, which is kind of interesting in itself, because if you're living in a hotel for like, say 3 months, the staff gets to know you. Mm-hmm. And, it's a completely different experience than if you're there for like a 5-day holiday.
Yeah.
You're living there, and they know it. So again, that's an experience that can only come through traveling the way I travel. And, I'll take those experiences. Like, people think when you travel like I do, you're gonna pull those experiences and write books based on the culture or the temple that you went to and stuff. And I don't. My books aren't based off of my travels that way. I kind of use my travels as seasoning, like salt and pepper, to enhance a scene or enhance a character. Just because I found a temple in Cambodia interesting, I'm not going to wrap a story around it, but I might take what I learned about that place and the feelings I got and add it to someone's house in San Francisco.
Yeah.
So that it's not that house. Or if I have an interesting conversation with a Malaysian shop owner and he had some interesting tics or personality traits, I'll take that and apply it to someone who works in a cubicle in the tech industry, just so that they're not like some person who works in a cubicle in the tech industry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like when you're doing all this traveling, like were you usually writing out of cafes or the places you were around?
I was writing everywhere, writing in cafes, mostly coffee shops, whatever coffee shop I can find, sometimes on the beaches, sometimes hotel lobby, in my room. It didn't matter where it was. Writing, I can pretty much write anywhere. I don't need like a desk, quiet, kind of serene place, any kind of, and in fact, I prefer chaos. I prefer energy around me. And I think that comes from years of working in, I don't want to say corporate America, but working in the ad industry, there's always people around you. It's craziness. So when I'm in a quiet area, it actually works against me because I can't function because it's too quiet.
Yeah. Yeah. And some people need total quiet and stillness. And, you need chaos.
I'm the complete opposite. I need noise. I need chaos. I need all that around me. So coffee shops or restaurants or any place like that work pretty well.
Yeah. So I remember you said you were in the advertising world. So you did like the Super Bowl commercials. I mean, you were like the big times.
I did. I mean, the kind of advertising I worked on was what they call brand advertising. So it's all the crazy stuff. It's not like, come on down, we got this Honda Accord for $999. It's got 4 doors and blah, blah. I call that dealer advertising, but that's really aimed at people who've already made a decision. I'm going to buy a car. It's between these three. Which am I going to buy? Whereas brand advertising is more about making the brand relatable to the person, or, positioning it in a way that they remember it, or repositioning it if it's got a negative aspect to it. So you get to do a lot of these crazy things without the hard sell. And so for the longest time, I was in advertising for 20 years. My job was ideation. It was coming up with ideas. So you get used to coming up with a lot of ideas under pressure with a lot of constraints. So coming up with an idea for a book for me is so easy because I don't have those constraints. I don't have we need it in an hour, It's like you can do whatever you want. So to me, it's super easy because I don't have all these rules baked in. But, you know, advertising, I loved advertising. It was the funnest job I had for a long time until it wasn't fun.
Mhm.
And it stopped being fun when they made you work in management. And I didn't like managing people.
Yeah.
I missed, you know, sitting around and making my friends laugh and coming up with stupid ideas. You know, it's kind of like how I imagine if you're a comedian
Mhm.
and all they do is sit around and try and make each other laugh, you know,
Yeah.
because that's what they do. They're comedians, you know.
Yeah. The next thing you know, you're the boss. And it's like, oh.
Yeah. Next thing you know, the boss, and the dynamic's not the same, you know. And you're
Yeah.
just kind of like, oh, this sucks.
It's so now with your writing process too, because it doesn't sound like what is your writing process like? Do you outline or do you just start writing? It sounds like you're like a writer.
I was a pantser at first because, and to be honest, it's because I didn't know what I was doing. So I didn't know how to outline. You know, if you didn't take any kind of creative writing courses or all that kind of stuff, you know, you don't know any of that. And even though I was a copywriter in advertising, very little copywriting is done. More of it was big picture kind of ideas, visually driven. So like the longest thing I ever written was probably a paragraph.
Mhm.
So I didn't know how to outline all that. Cause so I would just pants it. I would ask the question, you know, okay, this happens. And what happens next? Well, this would happen next. And then what happens next? Well, this would happen next. And I keep doing that until the story's done. That was literally how I do it. Now I kind of semi outline because the process is a lot quicker when I do that. I don't necessarily follow the outline, but I will spend time jotting down a few sentences, what I think is going to happen, just so that I have it there to refer to if I need to refer to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, for the longest time, I would just make it up. And if I had a great idea and I couldn't remember it the next day, then my thought was, well, it must have not been that great because you can't remember it. And come up with something else.
Oh, I like that. I would be like, oh, what was that idea? I'd be torturing myself. You're like,
yeah. You're torturing yourself. And it's like, why? Just come up with another idea.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. No one's gonna miss it because no one knows about it. Only you were the only one.
Yeah. Wow, and it's so incredible. So DarkBright's going to be the 19th, right? Abby Kane, is that?
Yeah, 19th Abby Kane. I never thought the series would go on this long. I actually never thought I would have a career as an author. You know, again, it was a spur of the moment kind of thing. I was well paid in advertising, but I hated it towards the end. And I just naively thought, well, I'll just become an author. You know, what's so hard about writing a book? You know, and I think that's actually great because I think if you don't realize how difficult it can be and you don't realize all the hardships and you kind of go into it blindly, I think it's better because then you don't start questioning yourself. You don't start overthinking and you don't start going, well, maybe I'll wait for this, or maybe I'll wait until I have more money saved up and all that stuff. I just looked at it as like, how different can this be than creating a 60-second commercial? It has a beginning, middle, and an end. That's all I need to do is make a beginning, middle, and end and just make it interesting. I figured if I can make, you know, a commercial about a watch interesting to someone, I sure as hell can make a story interesting.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and you went straight into self-publishing, right? You didn't deal with trying to find the agents or querying or any of that. You just said, I'm going direct. Yeah.
I was going to do that because I didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And then I found this blog about this author who was self-publishing. And the more I read it, I was like, wow, this is right up my alley. This is what I should be doing instead of going the traditional route. Because, you know, in advertising, you're making commercials, you're making print ads, you're making outdoors. Yeah, I'm not actually filming the commercial. You hire a director, you hire people who are really good about it, but you're there through the process. And so you are involved and you're making these things, you're part of it. And so I was like, why would I turn all this control over to some publishing house or whatever? And to be honest, I thought I could market my books better than they could.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I could design my covers better than they could, or at least I could hire designers and brief them better than what they would have done.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah,
that was
control too.
Yeah, I mean, and that was only because of my background. I'm not saying I pulled it off right every single time. In fact, I think there were times where having that ad background worked against me because it was too addy. I would make things too commercially. And it would lose a little of the rawness. So I kind of had to forget a little about my past.
Yeah, so interesting in writing a long running series like the Abby Kane books. So you have readers who expect something from the Abby Kane from those books because they love her and they love that series. So how do you balance that with doing something new like DarkBright? Like, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because that's a little bit, this is like a psychological thriller-ish, and there's like the dystopian thing going on.
Yeah. I don't think about it that much because I that's just the type of stories I write. I like big, high concept ideas. I like ideas that are so easy to elevator pitch that when you pitch it to someone, the average person can run with it. You know, you know, to me, that's how you know when you got a really strong idea because you can pitch it in a sentence and someone can be like, "Oh my god, I totally get that. You can do this and this and this. This can do this, and you can, it can be about this and this." So when the average person can start riffing on it, then you got a solid idea.
Yeah.
And I love coming up with ideas like that. And again, it's probably tied into my ad background, but so that doesn't lend itself to the typical crime thriller where it's like, okay, let's just start off with a crime and how do we make it interesting and how they solve it? Because I did write Abby Kane books like that, but when I did write those, they didn't really fulfill me as much as coming up with this big idea, which is the reason why I write trilogies within the series,
Hmm.
and that threw a lot of people. It's like, wait a minute, one book, one crime, next book, new crime. And I was like, nah, I'm writing a trilogy. And so I would write like books 3, 4, and 5 would be a trilogy. Books 7, 8, and 9 would be a trilogy. Books 10, 11, and 12 would be a trilogy. And so I think from the very get-go, you're either going to like what I do because it's different or you're not going to like it. And a lot of people don't like it. But thankfully, hundreds of
Yeah.
thousands of people do.
Yeah. You have to be doing it for over 10 years now. This is amazing in this business.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel really thankful and I'm grateful. But I always thought everyone was doing that well because I never paid attention to the industry. I was too busy traveling that the whole business of publishing and writing was really secondary. So I actually thought people were doing really well, or at least as well as me, or if not better. Because I wasn't sure if I was doing well. I was thinking, well, I'm not making as much as I made in advertising, so but I can still afford to pay my bills and travel. So I guess that's good, and that's exactly where I left it. But yeah, I mean, I never thought I would have this career, and then again at the same time, I guess I expected I would have this career because I stupidly quit my job and left. You know,
Yeah, it worked out. You didn't have a plan B, did you?
no, I had no plan B. I really didn't.
Uh,
You know,
and so now I always ask about the tools of the trade. So, like, what do you use? Use Word? Use something else? What do you used to write your books?
I just use Word to write.
Mhm.
I tried using Scrivener and stuff, but I don't know. The learning curve was just, I guess, was too much.
Yeah.
I'm pretty simple, so Word kind of solves the issue. And if I need to, you know, I'll refer to an outline. Well, that's where the outline comes in because then I can look at the outline and go, oh, okay, this is kind of where I wanted the story to go. But yeah, Word pretty much solves all
Yeah.
my issues and problems.
Yeah. And when you're writing a book, do you have like a, I know you probably hate this word. Do you have a routine? Do you like say I'm going to write 5,000 words a day or?
In the beginning, I didn't. It was just I would spend my mornings writing because I was most productive then.
Mhm.
But if I'm I remember once I was living in Bali and my routine was to get up in the morning, eat breakfast, go to this coffee shop. It was always empty. It was huge, but it was always empty. No one went inside there. So I had the place to myself. And I would sit in the corner. I would listen to music, writing, singing out loud. And the staff, they wouldn't pay me any attention. And then one day, this other foreigner came inside. And that kind of screwed up the routine because we both came there. He wrote blogs and we got absolutely nothing done every single time we were there on the same day because we would just talk and share stories about, he was traveling like I was, but he was married and he had a little kid. I think his daughter was like maybe 2 years old or 3 years old. So they were traveling as a family.
Oh, wow.
And so we would just waste a whole bunch of time. And it got to the point where he and I decided, okay, I'm going to work in this coffee shop. And right across the way was a Starbucks. And he's like, okay, I'll go to the Starbucks. And we had to separate, or else literally nothing would get done. So it was, back then it was like I would just follow, whatever interests me, and if I could get some writing done, I get some writing done. But, nowadays, the business is completely different. It's not like how it was back then. Mm-hmm. So I kind of stick more to a schedule now, and I have things that I know I need to get done, and it's more of a priority. I don't just drop things and just go and travel, and I think I'll go do this and this and this and this and forget about the book for 2 weeks. Yeah. Which is what I did a lot back then.
Yeah. So that is something too that is much more of a business now than it was 10 years ago.
Yeah, totally. I mean, again, it's like, I don't know how, I can't explain to people how I actually got here. It just kind of worked its way out. And I always tell people, just follow your dreams, follow your gut, because, most often than not, your gut is probably right. Mm-hmm. You might have to tweak what it's telling you to do, but most of the time it's right. Sometimes it's wrong. I remember once I was traveling in Indonesia, and I think it was in Yogyakarta, and I got off the train, and I knew I wanted to see certain temples, but they were really far away from each other. There was no way to get there from using public transportation. So when you get off the train, there's all these touts. And they're selling you stuff like, I want to be a guide, I can be a driver and all this whatnot. So I knew I needed a driver. So this one guy came up to me, offered his services as a driver. And so I hired him. I said, okay, take me to these places tomorrow. He's like, sure. So he met me at my hotel the next day, takes me to the first temple, and I have a great time there. He's just sitting in the car, and I go do my thing, and I come back, and we're going to go to the second place. He tells me it's about an hour away. So I say, okay. So doing that hour, because I've been traveling really hard the last couple of weeks, I fall asleep in the car. Next thing I know, I wake up, we're parked in a garage of some house, and he's sitting in the front seat looking at me. He's like, we're at my place. And I was like, what? And I'm still in this fog. I just woke up. I'm still in this fog. And he goes, come inside. You're tired. You can rest here. And I was like, okay, that's where your gut should, sound the alarms.
Yes.
But I was so tired. I was like, okay. I stupidly followed this guy into his house. This is like total serial killer setup. You know what I mean? And the whole time I'm going, should I be doing this? Should I tell him, like, no, let's just keep going? But I just follow him inside, and I start looking around his place, and I go, well, it seems normal. I don't see anything psychotic. And he points to a couch and goes, you can sleep here. I'm going to go rest in my room. And I was like, okay. And so I lay down, and I just went to sleep. I didn't think anything else about it. I could have ended up with my gut split, sliced open. And I wouldn't be here talking to you. But I don't know how long I was asleep, probably like almost an hour. And then I was awakened by him. He was shaking my arm, and he was leaning over, and he's like, it's time to get up. And I looked at him again. I was like,
okay.
And then he's like, it's time to get up. He goes, my wife made us lunch. Let's eat. And I was like, because the minute he said wife, I was like, okay, normal. And sure enough, he led me into the kitchen, and there was this huge Indonesian spread, and his wife was there, and she was all bubbly and happy. She was saying hello. And we proceeded to have this really great meal and conversation after. And it turns out he had been working really late the night before, didn't get enough sleep, and he really needed to sleep, or else he was afraid he would crash the car while driving. Yeah. So it was kind of innocently, but I guess, that's the great thing about different cultures. In America, you'd probably ask, do you mind if we do this? Whereas over there, they just do it,
Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah. It's kind of like, so in that case, was that a good thing to follow my gut? I don't know, but that's a great experience that I might use, to season a scene or something.
Yeah. No, that's a great story. I mean,
Yeah, I
That's
could have
never happened
died.
to me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could have been one of those, missing people.
Yeah. Is that why?
Never to be found.
But I think that's from your background, though. I mean, is that sort of like you're saying you use your background to season stories, but like when you're writing like something like DarkBright, can you tell the listeners a little bit about the actual story about that? Because it's wild. I love the elevator pitch
Uh,
for it.
yeah, so it's about this young woman who's found battered, beaten, bruised, stumbling along this remote mountain road. And the only thing she can say is dark bright. No one understands what it means. She can't explain it, but that's all she can say is dark bright, dark bright, dark bright. So Abby Kane, the FBI agent, and her partner are brought into the investigation to figure out what's going on. And during her investigation, when she follows the trail that this woman left behind, she ends up vanishing. And she later wakes up in this sterile maze of identical hallways. It's so weird. It's so like, what is this place? Because everything looks the same. It's like this endless maze of hallways that are identical. And then she discovers that there are other people living there. They can't explain to her why she's there. They can't explain what dark bright means, but they all look extremely happy, and it's as if it's utopia. So that's how the story is positioned and set up, and her partner, Kyle Kang, is like, what the hell happened to Abby? And that's the other side of the story. It's him searching for her, and she's in this weird Stepford Wives type of environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. And what was the? It was like Stepford Wife meets. I can't remember.
Silence of the Lambs meets
Yeah.
Stepford Wives, because there ends up the villain is this intelligent psychopath, and he's crazy, and that's a perfect example of how I wrote. I seasoned the character, so I wrote him the way I thought I should write him to play the role, but then when I went back, I started pulling in experiences that I remembered or thought of and attributing it to him, to pump up his character a little bit more, to give him some so that he's just not. I mean, how many books out there that have serial killers as a villain?
Yeah,
like hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, at least.
Yeah, and how many books have you read where they kind of sound the same? It's like whatever's. So I try to give them things that make them, I guess, again, humanize them. Like I love humanizing the villains and making them seem normal. And this just stems from the fact that how many times have you watched the news and people's like, oh yeah, he seemed like a great guy. I didn't realize he had 18 kids stuffed in his basement. This is the neighbor. We barbecue and grill every weekend. And how was I supposed to know? He was chopping kids up. So why? Because the guy came across as this normal human being. He was relatable. He was friendly. So that's humanizing a villain. But then you also want to season it and make it different, because a lot of authors humanize their villains. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of think about, well, how can I make him a little bit more different? And that's where travel comes in, because of all the people I meet, I steal from them. Yeah, technically. Yeah.
And how many books do you have out now? Because you've written standalone psychological thrillers. You've written a lot of different genres and other type of books too, huh?
I do. But I stay in the thriller lane. Mm-hmm. And the more if I were to only write Abby Kane, I would probably get bored. So I push out into action thrillers. I push out into assassin thrillers. I push out into psychological thrillers just to keep myself, interested. But I still write thrillers. So I might, I'm working on all kinds of stuff. I'm working on fantasy thrillers. I'm working on a dystopian thriller, but they're all thrillers. I'm going to write them as thrillers, but they'll be flavored as other things. Whether or not people will actually like them, I don't know. But, that's not something I really pay attention to. I figure, well, I've always done what I think people will like now. And the real reason is like, if I can make a commercial interesting and have someone pay attention to a 60-second commercial, I know I can make a story interested,
Mhm.
you know, and write it the way I think it should be and write it so it's relatable and has human aspects to it. And I think that's what really matters to readers, is that if they can relate to the story, if they can somehow find some kind of truth or some kind of, you know, besides it being interesting,
Mhm.
you know, I think it'll be successful. It's when stories are missing that part that it just becomes, you know, stale, a little bit stale, and just kind of running through the motion. Like you don't really care, you
Mhm.
know. Like I was just watching this movie the other night, it was some kind of Viking action movie, and it had all the plot beats that you would want, you know, bloody sword fight and axes and, you know, some lovemaking, you know, and mystery, intrigue, mythology, and had everything. But it was so boring, you know, because there was like no humanity to
Yeah.
it, you know, just you didn't really care about why someone was doing this or whatever, and it's just like whatever's, you know. But it had all the other things, you know.
Yeah.
You know, I think Fast and the Furious is interesting, you know, because at least the characters are interesting, you know, and they make you want to see it, you know.
Mhm.
But it still has all the plot points of an action flick, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But man, I almost DNF'd this movie, but I don't want to say what the name was, but you know, like that's kind of what I'm trying to, I guess, what I'm trying to say. I don't know if I answered your question. I kind of went off on a tangent there.
No. That's good. No, yeah, no, you answered it. It's good. And so now, and now this one, what's so interesting about DarkBright too, because now you've already talked about it, but it's a trilogy, but it's the 19th book in the series. So there's going to be two more books in this DarkBright world. Can you tell us a little bit
Yeah,
about that? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And again, this goes back to me wanting to write high concept books, and I tried writing them and making them fit in one book, but they're just, you know, to keep it at a manageable rate, like 80 to 90,000 words at the most, you know,
Yeah.
because you don't want the book to get too big,
Hmm.
because thrillers, they, you know, they got to move quickly. I'm not writing epic fantasy here. So that's why I write the trilogies. I break them up because then I can explore aspects of the story and I can keep asking the question, what if, what if, what if, what if, what if? And when you keep asking that question over and over again, you poke into areas you normally wouldn't have poked into when you're trying to make the book fit within 70,000 words
Hmm.
or 80, whatever your word count, and the word count you want to be. So it's books 19, 20, and 21. It doesn't bother me because most people uh, discover Abby with book 7, which is the start of the Suitcase Girl trilogy. So that's book 7, 8, and 9. And no one's complained about starting at book 7. You
Yeah.
know, so what I do is, rather than forcing people to start at book 1 or and go through it chronologically, I tell people, here's how I think you should read the Abby Kane series in the most interesting way.
Hmm.
And I start them at book 7. I start them with that Suitcase Girl trilogy. And I go, then you might want to read this. And you might want to read this. It's like, I don't think you need to start at book 1 to get the whole thing. You know, there's some people who might feel like they need to. And it's like, fine, okay, then here's the order. But I really think you should read it this way. So like when I'm done with the DarkBright trilogy, I'll probably direct people as first time readers of Abby right into that,
Yeah.
because it's book 19, but it won't come across as book 19. It'll just come across as a great story. And hopefully they'll have the same reaction that they have when they read the other books. Like, ooh, I like this. What else does this author have?
Hmm.
Well, you might like this trilogy with Abby, or you might like this one.
So what are you working on now then for right now, what are you working on?
Oh, I I'm working on the second book in another trilogy about this girl. Her name is Akiko Ono, and the series the first book is called The Little Sushi Chef,
Mhm.
and it's about this woman who wants to be a sushi chef, and that's all she ever wanted to do. But in Japan, it's a man's world. Like there are no women sushi chefs, and so she decides that that's all she wants to do. She wants to do it, and she's going to make it happen. And she gets accepted to this prestigious apprenticeship, but it turns out to be nothing like what she expected. It's sort of survival horror, and it's, you know, the way I tell people, it's like if the menu meets Squid Game is your kind of vibe, this book is going to do it, because this book will be the book for you, because the whole premise of the book is the last chef standing, or the last chef alive, wins, you know? So, you know, that's what she gets herself into. So again, it's a trilogy. And I just started writing the second book in her, I guess, I don't know, adventure. But in the first book, it's all about the apprenticeship and surviving. In the second book, it's going to be like, well, what's life like now that I've survived this horror? You know, what do I do next? Mm-hmm. And so again, I can explore what happens next. I can continue, are there other survivors from past apprenticeships? What about the winners of the last one? What are they doing after knowing what happens in this program? You know, it's like, so there's so many things you can explore that if you were to try and shove it all into one book, it would be too much. You know, it's just too much. And again, I'm writing thrillers, so you got to keep the pace moving. You don't have time to dwell on things. You know, readers who enjoy these types of books, it needs to move. The pages need to keep moving. So you got to keep that in mind. And, you know, I found the best way to do that is to just write trilogies. And that's pretty much where I boiled down my approach, is that I'm just going to write trilogies on everything that I write. And they could all be part of the same series or not. But, you know, it's like, if I'm working on a thriller, I guess you would call it historical fantasy thriller. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna write it as a trilogy. I may never write another book. I may write a fourth book I may not, but I don't care. And then I'll throw it out there and I'll move on to something else, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I love that you describe it that you write popcorn thrillers, high concept popcorn thrillers. I love that line. Can you explain that? What do you mean with that?
Yeah, these are the kind of books that they're not going to blow your mind away, but if you need something to entertain yourself on a flight from Los Angeles to New York, my book will do it. And then after, you can throw it in the trash. You know, you'll have a really great time reading the book, and then you're free to move on after that.
Get on with your life, huh?
Yeah, that's, to me, is what a great popcorn thriller is. It's like, it just, it's not Michelin star, and I don't pretend to write Michelin star books, but it's going to be addictive. It's like, you're not going to just be. It's not like a Lay's potato chip. You can't just have one.
Yeah, it's great story and entertaining. And I think that, especially nowadays,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Ty. Well, before I always ask my guests in the podcast before I let them go about, because I know I do have aspiring writers listening to this, and we all get into our own heads. Any advice for somebody wanting to write thrillers?
Yeah, and this is you probably heard this advice many times, but yeah, just sit down and start writing, because what you write, it's extremely important to see how readers react to what you write. Because what you may want to do, or what you may think you want to do, may not be what readers are reacting to or want from you or want to read. So the sooner you can put stuff down on paper and get it out there, the sooner you can get feedback on what you're writing and whether or not it's going to work or not. Because, I know a lot of authors, and I was in that boat too in the beginning, is that I just want to write what interests me. And I still only write what interests me. But, if you want to make a living at it, there's the other half to the equation. Yes. The person you're writing it for also has to like it, Yeah. But if you just want to do it as a hobby, and, your friends and family can do it, then fine, write whatever you want. Don't pay attention to anything else. Mm. But if that's not what you want, you want to turn this into a paying job, then you gotta see how people are reacting to it. You gotta make sure what you're offering them, and your book is a product. It's a product. What you're offering them is something they want. If it's not what they want, or a majority of people is not what they want, it's not going to work. Yeah. That's just the way it is, and you either accept that or you don't. And I don't think I know a lot of young authors and newbie authors don't want to hear that. But that's the reality of it. If you don't want to do that, then just treat it like a hobby, because the truth is, we don't make money from friends and families. We make money from strangers.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
You know, and when you're convincing a stranger who doesn't care about you, doesn't care about your book, doesn't care about you making rent, doesn't care about any of that stuff, you have to have a compelling offer on why they should part with their money.
Yeah, that's the business part of it that people,
yeah.
writers,
yeah,
think
and
about.
a lot of people don't want to hear about that because they want to be artists.
Yeah.
And that's fine.
Yeah.
You know, you do you, whatever makes you happy. And then, eventually you're going to see what the fallout is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's you're either going to be okay with it or you're not.
Yeah. That's good advice, man. And so where can the listeners find you? Like, what is your website, social media? I know you're active.
They can't. I'm a ghost, remember? I don't have a permanent residence.
Well, physically, but virtually.
Well, you can always find what's happening with me at tyhutchinson.com, my website. Or if you look up Ty Hutchinson on Instagram, Facebook, or TikTok, you'll most likely find me there too.
Yeah, and people can buy your books directly, right? Like that's very, for someone who's all on Amazon. The fact that people can buy books directly from you is wild for me.
I offer the best deals possible on my website so that I get people coming to me because it's like I don't have to worry about the commissions that the other retail platforms take, so I can pass that savings on to the reader. So
yeah,
I always encourage people to browse my website first. You know.
All right, Ty. All right. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast. It's fun talking to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.